Welcome to the panel called Why Don't We Believe in UFOs? A title, of course, which makes an assertion that may or may not be true. You've read the blurb. I'll probably be following the blurb in terms of questions to ask the panelists. But I actually want to, before we go to the panel for introductions and all that, I actually want to see if the title of the panel is correct. Raise your hand if you believe. I'm going to ask it. There's three options here. Raise your hand if you believe that UFOs represent the result of alien visitors. Okay. Raise your hand if you believe that there's some unexplained phenomenon that has caused at least some UFO sightings, but that's not, has nothing to do with aliens from elsewhere. How many people think all UFO sightings can be explained by, in conventional terms? Okay, a little bit more on the third, almost like one person on the first, but a sizable showing for the second, which is interesting.
I saw a whole bunch of hands that didn't quite admit to being raised for the first.
There was a lot of
these.
There were a couple Your third choice required absolute certainty. Right.
Oh, okay.
So
let me explain the narcolepsy comment. One of the symptoms of narcolepsy is sleep paralysis, usually accompanied by what are called hypnagogic hallucinations, in which you feel a presence is in the room. The best anyone who's ever experienced this, who reads an alien abduction story, rolls their eyes because it's so obvious what's happening. I should say anyone who's ever experienced this and had the degree of self-awareness to realize what's happening, and maybe eventually woken up and done some research and Googled it and figured, okay, this is a well-established medical phenomenon. You fall asleep, you go right into REM, you remain half conscious, you become paralyzed. It can also happen upon awakening, which is the more common case. I think alien abduction reports come from both, but none of the alien abduction stories are credible to someone who's a narcoleptic and who's experienced these narcoleptic symptoms, which also happen in the general population during sleep deprivation. The succubus myth and legends are a result of sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucination, fairy abductions. It's probably all the same phenomenon. It's hardwired in the human brain that we can get into this weird mixed state of consciousness, fall asleep, you paralyze, you can't move because the part of the brain that thinks you're in REM sleep is preventing movement, because that's what happens in REM. So people know that during REM sleep, the body's essentially paralyzed. Otherwise, you would act out everything you're doing in the dreams. And in fact, that is also a sleep disorder. People will get up and run around the room. So it's this weird mixed state of consciousness where you're aware, and you know you're in your bed, and you're aware of the room, and then the brain throws into this created elements of an intruder in the room, and the intruder always matches the cultural means. When 500 years ago, fairies came into the room and they took you away. Now it's flying saucer people come into the room and take you away, and it apparently depends on your individual psychology what sort of thing you experience. There's apparently some kind of wiring or mindset that causes an abduction experience, and another that causes the other totally common thing is that someone's on you and crushing you, and that's the origin of the succubus and incubus myths. It boggles my mind with someone like John Mack, is that the name of the Harvard guy who really totally believes in this? It has not been, including the fact that all these can be completely explained as hypnagogic hallucinations. They are so convincing. And even when you know what's going on, my classic one was I would take a nap at work. I would be, I had flex time, so I'd be working at the family business long after it had closed. I would fall asleep. I'd become paralyzed. I'd try to wake up. I couldn't move. And I would hear the voices of my siblings or my dad who worked in the building looking for me, calling my name. And I would, want to wake up, try to struggle to wake up, say, I'm here. They thought I was in danger. all the while I'm going, well, I know this is just sleep paralysis. Part of me, I know that I'm certain they're not really there. And yet, but what if they really are? There was that element of the brain because there was just enough of that loss of rationality and the raising of emotionality that you get in dreams. And so even though I'd read about it, I knew I had narcolepsy, all that, even though I knew there was no chance, part of me knew there was no chance they were actually in the building, I still had this horrible desire, need to wake up and yell to them, in case they were there. So now imagine someone who knows nothing of narcolepsy, nothing of this, who's generally not introspective or self-aware, how utterly convinced they would be of the reality of the phenomenon. So if you're going to talk about the evidence towards alien abduction, I'm going to think of just completely blown out of the water by the explanation that it's all just sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations. And it really answers the question of why it seems to be the same phenomenon as fairy abductions, which I believe is Jacques Vallée. Do people know that name? Anatomy of a Phenomenon, one of the best of the original UFO researchers. He was the one who I believe first spotted the fact that this is the same phenomenon as fairy abductions.
He was also the basis
of the character
of Truffaut's.
Truffaut's character in Close Encounters is based on Jacques Vallée.
And word Close Encounters.
Close Encounters is that classification. The Close Encounters of the Nth Kind is from Vallée's book. And he didn't know about sleep paralysis. He thought that there was an other out there that was obviously not alien because they'd been around since the Middle Ages. So he thought there was an other that shared our reality that was abducting and examining us. But you'd think that after all those anal probes, they would have figured out what was up there, right? Well, they're still doing this. The abductees are still being probed up there like they were, in the 50s. So in that sense, I think we have a really great explanation for the alien abduction report. But that doesn't answer, that's only the tip of the iceberg.
What about all these pieces of
So
paper?
now,
So all these pieces
Jennifer,
of paper.
go to it.
Actually, the whole concept
That was alien.
of the Disclosure Project is that all of these really, really sensationalistic eyewitness accounts of, I was abducted by aliens are specifically encouraged. And the more ludicrous and out there the people can be, the more they are encouraged, precisely because they are trying to hide what's actually going on.
That's great.
And there have been a few hundred people who have all been identified, who have the highest level of credentials, brigadier generals for the British service, admirals for the U.S. service, people who are at the very highest levels of corporate America, including former vice presidents of aerospace engineering companies. And all of these people went on record, had people videotape their interviews and, gave complete eyewitness expert testimonies, not to being abducted by aliens, but to their experiences working with alien technology. And these included such things as metal alloys that had been developed in zero-G, and I'm going to read the energy thing because there's no way I would remember it. But an energy generation and anti-gravity propulsion system capable of completely and permanently replacing all forms of currently used energy generation and transportation systems that access the ambient electromagnetic and so-called zero-point energy state to produce vast amounts of energy without any pollution. Such systems essentially generate energy by tapping into the ever-present quantum vacuum energy state, the baseline energy from which all energy and matter is fluxing. All matter and energy is supported by this baseline energy state, and it can be tapped through unique electromagnetic circuits and configurations to generate huge amounts of energy from space-time around us. These are not perpetual motion machines, nor do they violate the laws of thermodynamics. They tap an ambient energy field all around us to create to generate energy.
Where is that located? Where could we find it?
The question is, why did we attack Iraq for their oil? I mean,
Yeah.
The actual documentation can all be found